Ladies and gentlemen, this morning's guest speaker is Andrew Simmons, and as well as Glenn Ivers. I'll start with Andrew. Andrew is the director and founder of the Australian Anti-Ice Campaign. And throughout her life, she's achieved many milestones and becoming a millionaire by the age of 21. After having a life-changing experience and losing everything, including almost her life, to the drug ice, Andrew began devoting her life to the needs of those suffering from ice addiction and began educating others of the dangers and effects of ice use. Over the past 4 years, Andrew has collaborated with service providers nationally to act as a referral point for addicts and families in need. Now implementing Australia, a proven role model program successfully run in the US for the past 10 years, reducing ice use dramatically from 8.8% to 2.2% within the 12 years. I'm going to let her talk about the program a little bit more. I'd like to invite Andrew up to talk to us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me at your club today. My name is Simmons. I'm the director and founder of the Australian Anti-Ice Campaign. The Australian Anti-Ice Campaign was founded 7 years ago in order to educate and raise awareness about the dangers of the drug called ice, particularly as a spearhead. We all know drugs aren't good for you. They all have side effects, yeah? When we're taught at school, don't do drugs, your parents tell you don't do drugs, it's really bad for you. I was taught the same thing. But you see, one day, when I went through a divorce, I met somebody that I had known for 13 years in my previous life. And I trusted that person. I'd never really done any drugs. I've raised 2 kids, I've run businesses, And this person offered me a glass pipe with something that you smoke in it. I didn't really do pills or needles or any kind of drugs because I thought you can't control it, but I smoked cigarettes and I had tried a bit of pot in my younger days and I thought, hey, it's no big deal. This is no big deal. It's just something you smoke. And I decided to try it. Curiosity got the better of me. And I wanted to see what it was like. And I was 40, I had this, I wasn't going to take it again. I just wanted to try it and see what it was. I didn't even really know it was ice, and I didn't understand the consequences of my actions, what was about to happen to me. I said yes to that pipe that day, and I stand here today, and I am an ice addict in recovery, and I will always be an ice addict in recovery. I had long-term consequences associated from that decision. I didn't think it was a big deal to pick up that pipe that day, because everybody does something, right? Everybody tries some sort of drug, you hear that. And I didn't think that was going to take hold of me. I didn't understand what was about to happen. For the next 2 years of my life, I smoked 3 houses. I smoked ice. That's all I did. I smoked my 3 houses, my Mercedes, my business. I abandoned my kids. I lost contact with reality. And I lost who I was. I ended up lost in the streets, not knowing where I lived, running from what I thought was the government. I saw people behind trees, cameras chasing me, shadows under my doors, and I was fearing for my life. I locked myself in a room in Melbourne and I blacked out all my windows because I thought that the government were chasing me and they were going to kill me. I went into the deepest place of psychosis and paranoia and depression that I never imagined. I wanted to take my life. I was being used as a sex mule. I was considering selling myself to get more drugs because I needed it like I needed air. I couldn't function anymore without the next hit. When I did fall asleep, because see, when you do ice, you're awake for 10 days at a time, and you don't eat and you don't drink, and your body then shuts down at some point and you crash. And every time you do ice, you don't get high anymore. You just trying to stabilize and stay awake because your organs are starting to fail you. But see, I had no idea. When somebody handed me that pipe, they didn't tell me, listen, this is what's about to happen to you. These are the side effects to this drug. And some of those side effects, Andrea, they're not reversible. I stand here today and I look okay on the outside, but I have a lot of things that I battle daily. I have kidney problems, in and out of hospital with bleeding kidneys. I have a heart condition, and I see a cardiologist regularly. And I also have, early this year, they found that I have some holes in my brain. So what that actually means is that areas of my brain have been eaten by this drug. Yeah, you have neurological pathways that as you grow, you learn stuff, and they just, like little trees, they just grow bigger and bigger. Well, I've got black spots. And what that means is that there's parts of my life that I don't remember. I don't remember some of bringing up my kids and some of the things that I've done. I struggle to retain information. I have a memory problem with something in the brain called hippocampus, and it goes back and it retrieves memory, and mine doesn't work that good. My processing center, which is the frontal lobe of the brain, it scrambles, a lot. And I have amazing people that work with me every day to do what I do. Because see, my heart is to get in front of every youth, particularly in high schools. Because see, I didn't have the opportunity to be warned about this drug. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know that it was ice. I didn't know that ice was bad. I didn't know what it was made out of. I didn't understand that for the rest of my life, I'm going to be battling against the consequences of this drug. And I see that some young people here, now you don't have to go through what I've been through. The end result to ice use is mental health hospitals, prisons, or death. That's the road. It doesn't bring you anything good. I lived in paranoia, anxiety, depression, and I was suicidal. I was weighing 40 kilos. I'm about 60 now. It was almost 40 kilos, size 6 was falling off me. My mum didn't even recognise me at the airport. My hair was falling out in clumps. My kidneys were bleeding, my gums were bleeding, and I couldn't stop using this drug because I couldn't function without it. Guys, ice hijacks the frontal lobe of your brain, and very, very quickly, the drug becomes in charge and not you. The frontal lobe of your brain is responsible for making logical, rational decisions. Yeah, you're not capable of doing it. Many times I see people in media saying, oh, those druggies, just lock them up, kill them. There's somebody like me that's entrapped in ice addiction. They actually can't get out. I didn't know how to get out of that entrapment. I'd wake up and I'd reach over for the pipe because I couldn't lift my head off the pillow without having a hit. And I was entrapped in that downward spiral to hell. After 2 years of this life, and all I had in this house of mine was the walls, I had a television and a bed, because I'd pawned everything that I owned. My houses, my car, my jewelry, everything. And I was stealing to eat. By the grace of God that I'm alive and here today, because the dealer gave me some other drugs to top up, because it wasn't affecting me anymore. The ice wasn't doing it anymore. So they gave me what they call G. G is fantasy. I won't use many names, and it's actually a horse tranquilizer. He said to me, what do you weigh? Well, 50 kilos, but I was weighing 40, but because I couldn't see it, I thought I looked fantastic. I was a walking skeleton, and I was very sick. And I downed 5 mils of this G, and I stopped breathing. I remember going out into the black 3 times, and the person that introduced me to ice, who was also entrapped in this world, you know, he was shaking me and smacking me in the face, trying to get me to breathe, throwing water on me, and I kept going into the blackness. The third time I went into that blackness, I thought, okay, I'm dying. And if I'm dying, and if there's a God out there, take me and don't forgive me for what I've become. I was a shell. I was so lost and so confused. I woke up, I was actually thrown in the back room by this person that cared about me and was my friend and loved me. And he thought I was dead. And he shut the door and he went back out and did more drugs out in the lounge. And I woke up that night and I went back and did more drugs. I did more ice. Once you say yes to this drug, that's all you do. And there's no way of escape. 2 out of 100 people escape the entrapment of ice addiction. Guys, we have a 480% increase in methamphetamine found in our wastewater in a period of 6 years, the last 6 years. Our mental health issues have risen, tripled. Our domestic violence has risen dramatically. Our homelessness increased. Crime. We're not going to stop this by force, by just, you know, the police and officials trying to stop meth labs. That alone is not going to do it. We have to protect our next generation, and we have to expose what this drug is and what it does. And it's a poison, it's an entrapment. It doesn't, you know, it might make you feel high and really like your brain floods with dopamine the very first time you use it. And maybe even the second time, and maybe even the third, but I tell you what, the consequences associated with that and the hijack that it does, and what it pulls you into the places, the deepest places of hell that you don't want to live anymore, it's not worth it. Our message to the community is not even once, don't touch this drug. After having an encounter with God, which turned my life around, it was a supernatural thing that happened to me while I was, you know, 4 days clean, trying to get off the drug. I got the opportunity to get on a plane and come back home and lock myself in my mum's back room and just saw it through. I had a lot of awesome people come around me and love me back to life. I was blessed. 2 out of 100 people come out of that entrapment. The others end up dead. You know, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Many days I wanted to suicide. It takes 12 to 18 months for your brain to stabilize the chemicals after you stop using ice. For the dopamine to start working again, for your serotonin levels to stabilize, for you to start being able to think and process properly. And even at times now, I'm 8 years in recovery, and even at times now, when I get too much on my plate and too stressed, everything starts to scramble. My brain is not the same. I don't wish this upon my worst enemy. And I made choices that day out of ignorance. And this could have happened to any one of you. It's no big deal. Somebody can't go down the pipe, have a little, puff. I've made it my life's business to educate our next generation and show them that there's acetone in ice, nail polish remover, and that there's Drano in it, and that there's battery acid in it, and that there's rat poison in it, and that there's glass in it, and that they're lacing marijuana with ice so that you can get addicted and they can sell you more drugs. But they're cutting party pills, they're cutting them with ice. And ice hijacks your frontal lobe. It starts to eat away your body from the inside out. See, I wish somebody told me that day. Because every day, I just thank God for being alive. Yeah, this drug ate away at inside my vascular system and in my brain. And I know that I'm more susceptible to have a heart attack or a brain hemorrhage than anybody else because I've taken this poison. But I didn't have that opportunity to know what it was. What we do today with Australian Anti-Ice campaign, I was invited at first to talk in the school and show the kids what it is and what it does, the long-term consequences, how it attacks your brain, how it takes control over you, how you get psychosis and panic attacks and depression. And we integrate our personal stories into that evidence-based practice presentation. We have a conversation with these kids where they get to answer real questions. And we can give them real answers. It's not out of a textbook. It's from life experience. And our heart is that they don't ever touch this drug. All drugs have side effects, right? We have a doctor in the room. All drugs have side effects. Usually there's a little paper there that says side effects. You have to take this drug. This is what's could happen, yeah. But this drug ice does not come with a leaflet, and it comes in disguise, and it will be offered to you. I guarantee you. It's on our streets. You know, it's everywhere. I did a workshop with pathways yesterday, and one of the girls said, you can get a pipe anywhere under the counter just up the road. I said, yeah, I know. I've got it from Volvo. Yeah, I carried ice in my sock on a plane, landed, walked into a bottle. I said, excuse me, mate, can you tell me if I can get a glass of what? And he goes, I was like, wow, that was easy. It's everywhere. It's being produced in backyard sheds by 14-year-old kids. Okay? The chemicals are substituted from a harvester. How are we going to stop your child, your nephew, your niece, your grandchild? How are we going to stop them from not touching that drug and being destroyed? The only way to do it, guys, is send people like us into your schools, into your community, and to warn them. It's a hell. I've duplicated myself across Australia and other people that have managed to escape that entrapment. We've trained them, they become drug and alcohol counsellors. And they go back into schools and they do the same thing I do. We now have teams across Australia and Sydney, Coffs Harbour, Melbourne, Adelaide, WA. And we come up here 3 times over the last few years. I'm very, very interested in putting together a team up here in Townsville. We're going to all the schools in Far East Queensland, and every year they want us back. We want to do a community forum and bring the communities together to help stop this scourge affecting, this drug affecting our people. It's not fair. The education that we have in our schools about drugs, it just doesn't cut it. The teachers are saying, go onto our website, see what the teachers are saying. They're saying, we could have done that. We could tell them that this drug is bad. That's nothing. What you guys tell them is the truth. We go way deep. What I thought was no big deal, which is what kids do today. No big deal. Everybody pops up in there. They don't understand that what's being went through, what's being covered, and what they're going to live with forever. And we want to expose them. And we need your help. We're not funded by the government yet. We've been operating for 7 years, having to prove ourselves. Because you know why? They look at me and I'm just a drug addict. They forget that before I was a drug addict, I was a millionaire. I actually ran businesses, development. I was a mum, a wife, and a human being. I made a mistake to accept that pipe that day, and that could have happened to any one of you. And it can happen to anyone that you love. And I'm putting a proposal out there. I'm a Rotarian from Gold Coast Rotary. The Rotaries all over the Gold Coast, they have come together and they've come together to help us educate the community. We don't only educate the community, but we act as brief intervention people. So every day we help people that are in drug addiction and we help them create pathways into recovery. We help show them the way. We put them on a tripod system of support. What that looks like is we get them a counsellor, a buddy, which is like a sponsor, somebody like me to walk with them and encourage them and show them the way. Because see, they can't think for themselves yet. Their brain is scrambled. The frontal lobe is hijacked. So we provide them a buddy and we get them a drug and alcohol counsellor. We take them to NA and AA in group sessions. And then we try and find a doorway to get them into rehab. It's very difficult today. The rehab are full of capacity, our prisons are chock-a-block. Locking them up is not the answer, guys. There's no treatment facility in there. That's not going to stop the problem. We have to go back to the top of the waterfall and we have to warn and educate and expose this drug for what it is and help those that are already there, hold their hand and help them create a pathway out of hell into a life worth living. I'm doing a call to action today and I'm asking you to unite with us in the fight against ICE. The way that you can do that, I'm going to do learn up to explain that. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity to talk to you. I hope that you get to see a workshop which we do deliver in the A community forum setting so that you can get the information about this drug. It comes in so many different forms and so many different names, but it all does the same thing. And just because you smoke a pipe or pop a pill doesn't mean that it's any less dangerous than a needle. A needle is not more dangerous than smoking it. It all does the same thing. It's poison going into your body. I just hope you make better choices than I did, hey guys? Because I can't take back some of the consequences that I have to live with forever. But you got choice today, and you will get off it, I promise you. Make better choices for you. Have a life worth living, eh? Thanks for having me today. I'm going to introduce you and he's going to explain how you can help. Okay.
Thank you. Now, I think we need our technical expert up here with the PowerPoint. Look, guys, I've been involved now for 4.5 years, nearly 5 years, and my first meeting with Andrea as I left, there was a gentleman in the foyer by the name of Howard Bush, who was a long-term Rotarian on the Gold Coast. And Rotary had already been helping Andrea 2.5 years before I even fronted up. So in North Queensland, in Western Australia, and the Gold Coast, we've had a lot of support from Rotary. And you know, we believe one day soon we'll get government funding. We've got Torrens University, have got ethics approval to do a review of our workshop program so we can have some empirical evidence for government. But we need to push forward and build more and more of a case to government. So the more we can do, we can activate in Townsville, which we're starting to do, would be great. I don't have any personal experience with ICE, but I do have personal experience as a rugby league coach, and an under-12 team that my son played in, and he's now 30. There's 7 of those boys doing long stretches in jail now because of ICE-related crime, and some of it was ridiculous. One of those boys got on it 3 months, and after 3 months he went to his mother for more money. She wouldn't give him any more money. He actually bashed her reasonably badly, and came back to him, and he couldn't live with that, so he went out the back of the acreage block into his shed and put a rope around his neck. So he left 2 young sons. So that's why I'm here. We do training in clubs and schools, so we don't just do the workshops. We also train people to do brief intervention, to look at. You know, if I knew something back then when I was club president, I could have probably stopped that happening, but I knew nothing. So I just want to quickly run through, because I know we haven't got a lot of time, but quickly run through the extent of the problem, because I'm sure you all know there's a problem, but in terms of our youth, we just want to highlight the extent of the problem, where we see this nation going if something isn't done differently soon. Hopefully I'll get this thing to work. Oh. Okay, so the wastewater sampling doesn't lie. So what you see there is 3 years ago, there was 8.5 tonne of ice on the top line machine in Australia. Went to 9.87 tonne the year after. The last results, there was 11.5 tonne of ice. So that's 115 million individual points or hits of ice consumed by Australians in that 1 year period. And it's not stopping. So we know that the problem with this drug is it's being manufactured overseas in multi-million dollar or billion-dollar shipments, and it's coming into the country. The police call it a tsunami of ice, but also with this drug, it can be produced locally, as Andrew mentioned. So there's far more sophisticated labs being set up in Australia, particularly now that with the restrictions to travel, and you know, there has been a drop in, I guess, the amount coming into Australia because of COVID and all of that. But we know that the labs are just gearing up, so young kids can make it on it. You know, people go week to week in hotels, and they'll cook up a batch in for 1 week. The next person who comes into that hotel is not, you know, is at risk for their health. We know, everyone knows about the crime that results from ice. I won't go into that. But for me, you know, what we see with the way when we help people, probably the most devastating impact that I see is when, you know, we've got a mother who's already lost 3 children to this drug, and she's pregnant again, she's in hospital, family services are there waiting to take that child the minute it's born. And we see that over and over again, and the stats are ridiculous about health and that's happening. So the damage to those young children and to the family units is really hard to measure. One of the big problems is back 10 years ago when Andrew was first introduced to this drug, the purity or the strength was 10–15%. The way they now manufacture it, it's gone up to 80 or 85% in some cases. So rapidly takes control of young people. And there's evidence to show that young people just really have no resistance. So people, older people who might have smoked a bit of weed or something and they have an ice pipe and they start to go down that destructive path, have some capacity, not a lot, but they have some capacity at times to say this is not good and I'll ease back and stop. But what they found with young people is they binge on it. After that first weekend where they try it, the young blokes are told this is going to make you ripped and invincible, and the girls are told, you know, you'll lose 4 or 5 kilos over the weekend. They're gone. They've done it for 2 or 3 days, and they try it again the next weekend or the next month, and they've spiraled into dependent and then addictive usage patterns. With that increase in purity, we see here from the National Household Survey in 2010 of all the people who said, yeah, I use ice, 12% also said I'm using it daily or weekly, so quite dependent use. 3 years later, that's gone to 24% in 2013. By 2016, nearly a third of people who self-report ice using also self-report addictive or dependent usage of it. And we know the outcome of that. So 3 years down the track, 4 years down the track, who knows, it's probably higher than that. And you know, with young people, it probably is a lot higher than that. We know that dealers are out there handing out little sachets of this stuff. In a lot of towns, we've been told, you know, they'll wait outside the school. In some towns, there's teachers escorting the kids to the bus to get them past the ice dealers who are trying to give them a free sachet to get them hooked. Not even once. So that first time, they're coming back looking for more. For me, one of the most frightening research studies is the University of South Australia a couple of years back found that young kids who've used this drug 5 or 6 times are showing brainwave patterns and physical tremors similar to early onset Parkinson's disease. And it's amazing to us that this hasn't sort of become much more part of public consciousness, but it just seems to get buried. The withdrawal period that Andrew has mentioned, so a young person gets on this drug, it's very hard to get off it. If the alcohol and heroin, the physical symptoms sort of dissipate within the first couple of weeks. There's obviously other issues that people have to deal with to sort of break free from that. But the ice, it's 8, 12, 18 months. And this is the National Ice Task Force telling us this. It's not me making it up. So a young person, 15, 16, 14 that we see, as young as 8, some people that Andrew has had to be honest with, you know, kids who just pick up an ice block because mum and dad have left it there. And all of a sudden you've got an 8, 10-year-old taking one of the most potent and addictive drugs ever known to man. So that's what we see. You know, people talk about a an epidemic. We see it as a looming national catastrophe because of the amount of young people who get on this drug. You know, guys, after 12 months of living in rehab, the relapse rate is around 88%. So it's for us to help people out of that addiction. It's just, you know, it's hard yards. So as Andrea said, we've got to get to the source and get to the school kids. So this is what we do. And, you know, Tully, Innisfail, all through there in the last week, there's been about 800 kids see this program. Some of the kids in Townsville. We want to bring that to Townsville. And without government funding, we I guess looking to the community for support. The point I would make is that, you know, I just see the little kid's hand up there. You know, we were at a workshop the other day. There was a mob of Indigenous kids, 60 kids in the room. And I looked across at one stage and there's probably 10 or 15 got their hand up to ask a question. So the engagement that these guys get with kids because of their honesty and the fact that they're prepared to tell their story, it's amazing. This is, you know, we give a feedback form to the school. And what you see is this is a feedback form from Redleaf State College in Cairns. And on the left, down the bottom is all the criteria we ask them to evaluate us on. And on the right is, you know, a 10 out of 10 for all of those. Sometimes we get a 9, but the feedback is amazing. Redleaf College, the teachers there said it was the best thing she's seen in her 13 years of teaching. So that's consistently what we get. So we're desperate to get this into the schools. We know that the more schools we can get it into and the more momentum we can build and the more of these testimonies that we gather, the more pressure we put on government. And we are knocking on the door, but that time will come. But at this stage, we're not funded by government. These are some Rotarians in Innisfail, Fitzgerald. These guys have been amazing in helping us. So what happened in Innisfail, Fitzgerald is 2 years ago, the guys raised some money between 3 different clubs and got us into the schools. But what's happened then is the schools saw how it worked, so they brought us back and back again. And this year the schools have almost doubled the number of kids that are going through, but the Rotarians haven't had to pay for that this year because the schools, PNCs and the schools have now said, all right, we see what that looks like, we'll come up with it. So, you know, once a gentleman in Rotary in Western Australia once said to me, "Man, Rotary can't fund you, but we can give you a leg up and give you some assistance to get started," and that's what we're looking for. So we developed you know, what is an intervention where we can work with Rotary clubs. Basically, how that works is we just have staged a walk against ice. So in this town, might be somewhere around the foreshore here. In September, we do it, and you know, wherever we can pick to walk. And we use that to raise funds to get our high schools program working. So Rotary clubs have been amazing in helping us with that. When we first kicked it off, we did walk against ice in Cairns and Mareeva and all around Australia, one in Bunbury, Western Australia. And again, all of those were run by Rotary clubs, and we're looking to, I guess, gear that up and do it a lot with a lot more clubs. This is just the walk against ice page in Cairns. So you can see that a lot of the media organisations up there supported it. And for us and for Rotary, Ron Dagenhart was quite instrumental in helping that all happen up north. But there was a lot of media coverage. So what the Rotarians have found is that they're not just helping us, but there's a lot of media and a lot of awareness of Rotary as a result of doing this as well. So this is Cole Lawson. He was the assistant governor up in the Cairns region. We had 4 clubs in Cairns work together collectively in Cairns to put it together. And we met with one of the clubs last night, and we're really thankful there's other club representatives here this morning. So we hope that Rotary and Townsville might be able to combine and work together to help us put on this little walk against ice and get things going. That's just some other media in Innisfail that was generated as a result. So that's what it's sort of about. It's really quite simple. We decide a place to walk, where we're going to go. We get council approval, which is pretty much automatic, particularly with all the connections that you guys have. We get some entertainment, so we normally put on a sausage sizzle. In some of the cases, there's, you know, some bands played. It's not essential, but some of the small ones in central Victoria, that can happen with just a sausage sizzle with some talks. And the event page, we set all that up, and then we start doing the media. So as soon as we are able to say in Townsville we're going to do a walk against ice, even though it's September next year, we start to publicise it and we start to put some awareness out there that's happening. We've got a 1-800 NOVA ICE number where people can call up and connect with somebody like Andrea, because there's a lot of stigma around this drug. Parents and people, you know, we're meeting with the Rotarian in Cairns tomorrow, whose nephew is entrapped in ice addiction. Nobody is immune to this. And I would have thought that Rotarians, you know, being respectable and people who put service above self might be a little bit immune, but nobody's immune. We can do the best for our kids, and you know, these kids up the back, I'm sure you've been told by your parents and your grandparents don't do it, but there are people out there who'll say, no, mate, don't believe that. This is the best thing you'll ever do. Just have a puff, as Andrea said. So we want to get that media out there, get that 1-800 number out there. And if people want to come forward to help, people like Andrea are really powerful because they have been there, they can identify with the people, and they can show those people that there's actually hope of recovery when they've almost given up all hope on their life. And then we just stage and publicise the event. So that's what it is, guys. It's pretty straightforward. Every one of those towns on that map have two things in common. They've probably all got an issue with drug to some extent, with ice, and they've all got a Rotary Club or a number of Rotary Clubs in them. So we're looking to hopefully have this build momentum and have this Walk Against Ice be a national Rotary project with hundreds of clubs all around Australia. And that's why we're here to ask you to sort of band with the other clubs in town and get it on. I guess when I first started talking at Rotary clubs, I was blown away. I had tried to join Rotary, by the way. I went to join Inspire Fitzgerald, but the boys were a bit slack through COVID and they haven't put me through yet. So, but I live on the Gold Coast now, so I'll probably have to join there. But what I asked the guys is, you know, 4 questions, and they're 4 questions that are very well known to you. So let's look at the industry of ice production and manufacturing and distribution in the context of your 4-way test and say, well, is it the truth? Is somebody saying to a young person, here, just have this, will be the best thing you'll ever do, it won't harm you, and you'll lose some weight, when in reality it's going to destroy their life? It's the biggest lie that you can possibly come up with. It's not fair to anyone except the multi-billion-dollar dealers at the top who don't even use the drug, they just sell it and produce it. So that's the only people who benefit from this drug. There's no goodwill, there's no friendships, it destroys families, we all know that. And obviously there's no benefit to anybody. So that's what we ask, you know, guys, and it is a call to action. So we just ask you to stand with us and be part of that. I'm not sure, we'll just continue to, discussions with the presidents and the governors around here in the next coming weeks and see how we can put that together. But that's our plea to you guys, is to get involved and give us a hand. Thank you.
I'll call on Tony Jules to go about it. Thanks. Andrea and Frank.
Sorry. It's a box.
Thank you, sir.